I stumbled upon an interesting post on Reddit, which mentioned something about yo-yo. In that post, the user asked, or rather ranted, about two things. First, why any does not bother to change the yo-yo message into something more appropriate, more correct in translation, and preferably something that does not spread enough toxicity to power a small nuclear reactor. Second, why people still bring that message, even though it is often used with a toxic meaning rather than its literal meaning? This post interests me, not only because I can relate to the whole situation, but because long ago, I spoke about how IDV can be such a toxic game because of its mechanism. That Reddit post kinda makes me want to talk again about the whole toxicity thing happening in the game, which is still going strong even after all this time. So today, let us discuss this whole yo-yo message and how this one tiny sentence is the tip of the iceberg of toxicity in IDV. Speaking about yo-yo, we often think about that one small, round-shaped toy made from wood or plastic. Well, some people call it a yo-yo, although others will call that toy a torture device, because whenever you swing the rope, that thing either hits your eyes or your head, depending entirely on luck and how much the universe hates you that day. Anyway, in this game, yo-yo has another meaning. Yo-yo in IDV is an abbreviation of "you're on your own," which is an in-game message used by the survivor side during the match. Players can pick this message among many other messages and can use it whenever they see fit. This message did not exist from the beginning of the game, but appeared around Season 20 or something. The addition of yo-yo was also marked by the disappearance of the thank you message, which had already evolved into another way of saying "buck you." Take note of these two terms, because both quick messages eventually gain the same meaning, which is basically "go F yourself," just with different grammar. The yo-yo message is intended to indicate that the player saying it will not go for a rescue. As we know, there are several situations that make someone unable to rescue, such as being too busy decoding, not bringing tide, being too far away, or simply being unwilling because they consider the one on chair to have a severe case of skill issue. The last one is what twisted this message into something bitter. How so? I will explain soon, but all in all, the thank you message and the yo-yo message, both of which can be translated as a polite, or not so polite, "go F yourself," show that even a normal message in IDV can turn into a powerful psychological weapon. Before we talk about the yo-yo message itself, it is better that we understand one thing about IDV, that at its core, this game is a competitive multiplayer game. In other words, this game is basically a replacement for an MMA arena, except the fighters are holding flashlights and flare guns instead of throwing actual punches. For survivors, the match requires good communication and coordination, which makes in-game messages practically mandatory. And because the tension of the gameplay is so high, the communication often turns into something passive-aggressive. In short, IDV's gameplay mechanism encourages passive-aggressive communication, as if the tutorial secretly taught from unication. Psychological warfare. Adding to this is the message itself that, if you think about it, carries an unclear meaning thanks to the creative wording the developers came up with. "You are on your own" can be interpreted in many ways. It may mean that the person saying it is not going to rescue their teammate. It can also mean that the support role cannot assist because they are doing something more important, like healing others, or having a ping issue. And of course, it can also mean that the sender believes the target of the message is being abandoned due to skill issue, ping issue, or maybe carries bad luck. This last interpretation is what makes the yo-yo message considered toxic by many players. But how can people come to that kind of interpretation? Well, to answer this, let's check the competitive nature of IDV and their main dish, rank system. The rank system that encourages players not only to play their best, but also puts mental pressure on them, to the point that it becomes normal for players to feel the tension from head to toe. This, in turn, makes every message thrown feel 10 times more personal than it should. For example, a simple "thank you" can suddenly feel like a sarcastic, nice-going jackass. Thus, This made yo-yo message feel more personal when said in an inappropriate timing, which is honestly almost every time in IDV gameplay. Imagine being chased by that one geisha, having a skill issue, and get knockout while at the same time, that one seer that did nothing to help was saying yo-yo because he got a ping issue that made him unable to move. Awkward moment, don't you think? But the problem does not lie only in the game mechanism. Multiplayer competitive games often create a culture where players will try to break each other's neck, figuratively, like it is a battle royale all over again. That is why I mentioned in a video a long time ago that IDV should make a crossover with Squid Game, because the vibe is already halfway there. And even though there is a censorship system and the threat of being muted for inappropriate language, that alone cannot stop players, who have been exposed to this kind of competition, from being toxic. They will simply express their anger or frustration through any message they feel suits the moment, and yo-yo is one example. Newer players also learn from observing their teammates, and it creates a beautiful family tree of toxicity, proudly passed down through generations like an IDV heirloom. I can't really say why NE did nothing to change this one message, and instead removed some useful messages for survivors. If I may speculate, I think this yo-yo message still exists due to several possibilities. The first possibility is that it is simply overlooked and has a low priority. So far, gameplay balance is still a major issue for NE. I kind of want to talk about the connection issue as well, but let's not open that box today. Gameplay balance remains a problem even now, with the newest example being several survivor buffs that turn them into something close to Hercules. This also shows that the developers are focusing on the balance issue first, rather than the message, at least for now. And even if the gameplay balance was resolved, which is technically impossible if you ask me, their priority would move on to making more and more gorgeous skins, especially for the characters that print money. Because at this point, we all know this game can also be called a fashion showcase disguised as a horror game. In my opinion, NE would only consider reassessing the yo-yo message if the message starts hindering the game's progress. In other words, NE will think about changing yo-yo if it causes thousands of players to quit, cry, or send customer support messages until the inbox bursts. That is why the second possibility is that the message has not been reported in large enough numbers. Perhaps if many players reported this issue at the same time, like, a nationwide protest, NE might consider changing the message. But would that be easy to do? Not sure. As far as I can see, some players are already attached to the message. Like I mentioned earlier, even if IDV does not directly encourage toxicity, the game's mechanics allow it to bloom beautifully, like a poisonous flower, and some players simply cannot resist the thrill of light psychological warfare. For these players, yo-yo becomes a convenient tool that is too useful to remove. Not to mention, there are also players who simply enjoy using yo-yo for comedy. For example, teasing their IRL friends mid-chase with a friendly, "You are on your own," while everyone laughs and tries not to die in the process. This means the yo-yo message still has value, and that value may be one of the reasons NE does not want to remove it. All in all, this message, or the misuse of this one message, shows us that how competitive mechanics, when paired with limited communication means, can create a new form of toxicity. So, how should we deal with it? Should the message be changed after all? If we talk about whether this message should be changed or not, I will definitely say that it would be better if it is changed. After all, the literal meaning of yo-yo is already quite ambiguous. I understand that perhaps the developers wanted the message to be usable in multiple situations, but with the fact that it is now commonly used to verbally slap someone across the screen, maybe it is really better if this message is quietly escorted out of the building. Also, there are several alternative messages that could replace yo-yo with a similar meaning, but clearer, safer, and less capable of triggering emotional damage. One option I can think of is, "Sorry, I can't help." This one sentence has every element of, "You are on your own," without sounding like you are throwing your teammate into a shark tank. It can also be used in many situations, whether the player is unable to assist in a rescue or during a kite. There are some more options I can think of, but honestly, this one is the safest and least likely to cause someone an emotional breakdown. That being said, would it even matter to change that one yo-yo message? Well, in my opinion, not really. How so, you ask? Because the real problem is not the message. The problem is the behavior of the players. If the root of toxicity lies in the people and not the message, then even if yo-yo disappears, the toxicity will simply move into something else, like a migrating bird that just keeps finding a new tree. Any can remove the yo-yo message, but toxic players will always find a new sentence to stab each other with. One example is the message, "Hunter has abnormal," which in the Chinese server is often used to imply the person receiving the message is the one with abnormal behavior. And by abnormal, it generally means someone whose gameplay looks like they are playing Hotel Hideaway, while in fact, they are playing IDV. Now, can the toxicity in this game be cured? Hard to say. At its core, competitive games, whether directly or indirectly, push players toward aggressive behavior, which naturally blooms into toxicity. It is not just the game design that led to toxicity, though. The gaming environment and each individual player's mindset also contribute. In fact, the smallest friction in competitive gaming can trigger toxicity, and unfortunately, that is pretty normal, or treated as normal. Perhaps toxicity in the game can only be erased when everyone values each other's struggles, opinions, and efforts. In other words, when all players develop deep empathy toward one another, then the toxicity of the gaming world will truly fade. But that might be an utopia none of us will ever experience anytime soon. As for me, I simply try to accept this fact and not think too much about the toxicity that happens in the game. After all, I play games for fun. I play games to live, not the other way around. So when the other becomes toxic to me, I'll simply say, "Yeah, you're welcome." Thanks for listening to my rant, and see you next time.